Hello, this is Ben here. You're looking at a portfolio of my design work from the past couple years. In 2006, I did a lot of work with the Canadian Adaptations of Shakespeare project doing web design. My most interesting experience was developing Spear, an educational arcade game with them. I spent a good chunk of time in 2007 developing a easy-to-use XML RPC-based CMS system that I then set up several people using so that they could easily edit their websites without knowing much about HTML. We use this CMS system for our contest entry for the IEEE web design contest. We went for a very simple design and then used the CMS system to just enter a lot of information. Our topic was Susan Kerr, who's the designer of a lot of the original Mac icons, and she did a lot of icons for Windows 3.1 and for Next, and essentially she was around in a lot of the early computing systems doing graphic design work. And you're just seeing here the little icon making tool we made as a part of the contest entry, and you can then upload your image and it will show up in a gallery. I've recently been developing software for the Drive Lab, which is a cognitive science research group at the University of Guelph. Again, I've been trying to develop simple software that can allow people who don't know much about programming or computers to set up the experiments that they want to set up, but still have a lot of control over them. And to do this, I've been using an XML-based format for setting up trials. One of the biggest and most interesting projects that I've been working on lately is Hack Wars, which is an online game which teaches players about programming, web design, and a lot of other fundamentals about computing. And it does so in a competitive environment where people basically compete with each other and try to make money and hack each other's computers, basically. A player basically controls their own virtual computer, which they can then use to make money through an online store or through hacking other computers. They can upgrade it using new hardware. They can set up servers like an FTP server or an HTTP server, which using those together they can actually set up even an online store. They can install programs which can be either applications like an attack program or an HTTP or FTP program, or they can even install daemon processes like Linux. They can also use a virtual internet and a search engine to find websites to attack, for instance. And you do so by port scanning them and actually seeing what applications they've actually installed, and then you attack them then. Players have been putting a lot of work into creating websites which uses just raw HTML, and then you can actually find it in the search engine. And one thing I noticed that was interesting was that people were setting up web rings like I noticed in the early internet, so it seems like we're going through the same growing pains as it did. The amount of work people put into their websites is pretty amazing, though, because these aren't developers, these are just people who have found us on the internet, so it's really interesting to see. You can create your own programs and install them using an IDE we've made, which is pretty standard. You then compile the programs, and there's a cost associated with compiling them. There's also a bunch of programming challenges that you can do, which are a lot like first-year programming assignments for university, for instance, which basically get you to do little tasks. One really interesting thing that we've been working on is a game creation engine, which basically allows you to import sprites and other resources which you can then put together and actually start to create a full arcade game, like a classic arcade game. So you see some sprites here. You can also create a bunch of maps which you can then place them on, and then you basically use a mock object-oriented programming language using RC, a scripting language, but you can actually put it together into a game. And we see here a game I've been working on here to test everything out. And that's Hack Wars, a game that relatively subversively teaches players about the fundamentals of programming and web design in a competitive, fun environment, and we've had a fairly good response from our players, and we hope to keep growing that. And that's my portfolio from the past couple years, and you can see that I've always had an interest in educational software and in creating fairly user-friendly software, which I think are two very important things. But as you can also see, I'm not interested in making educational games that are similar to the ones that people might remember from grade school.